Welcome to Your Future in Sales and Marketing, a podcast that helps you make great career decisions to get the most out of your career journey. We'll introduce you to the AXR network of established senior leaders and a handpicked group of future aspiring leaders who have it all in front of them. You'll learn what it's like in the top job and how to get there. Your hosts from AXR's specialist sales and marketing recruitment team will also land bonus episodes for you on how to work with recruiters, write a resume, and smash an interview, as well as our very popular market updates. It's the podcast that has it all. You can't get this career advice anywhere else. Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Future in Sales and Marketing. I'm Andrew Cannock and I'm a specialist sales and category recruiter here at AXR. Today, I'm delighted to be joined on the podcast by a true FMCG power couple. Tess Gerrand is Head of Customer Category and Execution for Australia and New Zealand at Kraft Heinz, and her husband, Adam Vinehall, is Director of Operations and Transformation at Circana. Tess and Adam both have backgrounds in elite sports and have since developed thriving careers in FMCG. Today we'll be exploring how they've got to where they are, as well as how they balance career with the commitments of raising their young family, and what more we can do as an industry to support working parents. We hope you enjoy what should be a really interesting conversation. Adam, Tess, how are you going? Thank you for joining me today.
Good, thanks. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You're very, very welcome. No, looking forward to getting into this. I think it's going to be great to explore not just career journeys, but something very close to home for me at the moment, which is the juggle of work and parenting. So I think it's going to be a really, really good conversation to get into. We'll kick off with our normal icebreaker to you both individually. Maybe Tess first. What is your favorite brand and why? And you can't pick one that you've worked on.
Cool. I think for me, one of the interesting brands that's popped up in my sphere recently is The Ordinary. So they do skincare and they've kind of democratized the skincare industry in terms of coming out with products that are purely centered around the active ingredient. And they do it at a really value-driven price for everyday consumer. So I feel like it's been quite revolutionary and I love the way it's just simple. Even the brand name, right? The Ordinary. Yeah. It's simple, it's straightforward. The titles of the products, like you're used to seeing, anti-aging, etc. These are all about the active ingredient. So it's about what it does. So I think they've done a really great thing for the skincare industry.
Sounds like a much more positive positioning than anti-aging, or because I feel all the most cosmetic products, they kind of describe in detail the thing that's broken about you that this is supposed to help you fix.
Miracle cream, spend $300 and you'll be perfect.
Exactly. Good one. And Adam, what about yourself?
Look, for me, I'm probably recycling. I think James Farrow, who's been on the podcast, had this same brand, and so I'm stealing with pride. But it's Lego. Overwhelmed that our kids are into Lego, mostly because I get to play with it again after 30-something years of not playing with it. I just think it stands for a really awesome mix of fun, creativity, structure, imagination, non-gendered, great toy for adults, kids, and everyone in between. So I think they've been on a phenomenal journey as a brand as well since their inception, and what they do now and how they intertwine themselves into everything that's popular and resurging what's popular is super cool. So I love them. Yeah.
Great.
I look forward to getting more of my Lego out as our kids get older and playing with it.
Nice. As painful as they are to stand on, when you step on a stray piece, we do love them.
Resilience building as well. Andrew.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And try to keep a lid on the swearing in those moments as well. So in terms of career journeys, guys, so Tess, let's start with you. So you're leading customer category and execution at Kraft Heinz. Prior to Kraft, you had a really decent spell with Coca-Cola Amatil, and you're also just quietly an Olympian. Take us back. How did the career journey begin for you?
Yeah, so I think it's quite topical with Ariarne Titmus retiring from Olympic sport in the last couple of days. So I think there's been a lot of conversations in the media about athletes retiring. And it's a really, daunting period in your career when you grow up wanting to be an Olympian and that's all you think about. And then you retire and you've got to figure out what that next stage of your life is going to be. So I retired at 26. And then had to figure out that next stage of life. And Adam and I were talking about it, I think, in preparation for this a little bit. We had to really, leverage our network to go out and see what that next stage of our life would be and my life would be. So I always planned for a plan B outside of sport. I knew that wasn't going to pay the bills as I grew older. So at 26, I went out and was a bit more of a mature graduate applicant and met actually the MD from Coca-Cola Amatil at the time, was an ex-rower and still currently rowing as a master. And so he recommended their cross-functional leadership program, their graduate program that they had. And for me, that was just a really solid grounding in the industry. I went out, I was a rep. So I had a Coke car and I loved and was the hardest rotation that I did. I spent time in procurement as a commercial analyst. I spent time in the strategy team, spent time in the L&D team, and also in their transformation office. So it was just a really solid grounding to come into the industry. But I loved sales because that rotation that I did out in the trade was the hardest. So I wanted to go into the account teams, national account teams when I came off that program. Went in as an account exec working on Woolies, and then spent a couple of years doing that. And as every 20-something-year-old does, thought I was ready for the next step and, really wanted to move as quickly as possible. So went out and got some broader experience into the liquor part of the Coca-Cola Amatil business and was a national business manager working on the independent. So, expanding that experience outside of just grocery, working in liquor and the independents as well, which was fun. I'm not sure if I'm always cut out or will always be cut out for the independents world, but it was a really good experience for me. And then I came back into the Woolies account team as an NBM and had a much bigger portfolio, which actually included a brand called Mojo Kombucha, which the Coke company had recently purchased. And they were trying to integrate it into the total sales team within Australia, but it wasn't quite working for such a small brand within the systems and ways of working that we had at Coke at the time. So we actually split that sales team out. So I went and worked separately as the senior national business manager, or really like a channel manager for retail for organic and raw on the Mojo Kombucha brand, which was really good experience working basically on my own with an account manager across all of retail for Australia. Got some great experience there, basically being a demand planner, running the channel, being my head of RGM, if you will. So yeah, definitely got my hands dirty in that role. And then we were ready to have our first kid. So, and it coincided with that business needing to resize, given I had some really strong predictions on what the kombucha category would do. I thought it would sort of double over the next 5 years, and that definitely wasn't going to happen. So it was a well-timed restructure for us in that I was ready to go and have a kid. So took a year off on maternity leave and also finished my executive MBA that year. So Adam and I took the year off together. He was a primary carer for most of that time, so I could finish off my exec MBA. And that brings me to more recent times in Kraft Heinz. I was really ready for that next challenge. Again, probably being a little bit uppity throughout my career. So I wanted that next challenge and was really keen to lead an account team in a larger team and in a larger business. So yeah, I went to Kraft Heinz, heading up the Woolworths account for Kraft Heinz, and did that for 12 months before we had our second baby, and took 6 months off that role for our second boy, Wyatt, and then came back into the business, and there was an opportunity for me to take finally that sidestep into category and more sales ops and go to market. So started in this head of customer category and execution role just under a year ago.
Awesome. Being uppity is okay as long as you can back it up, which you have done so far.
So far.
Yeah.
No one's caught me out just yet.
Oh, we all feel like that. I can guarantee you. Yeah, not many people get to say that they've retired at 26. But a nice demonstration as well, the benefit of sport giving you the network that can create opportunities for you as well. No, great story. Adam, so your career spans a few different areas: transformation, operations, insights with IRI and Circana, and there's some good sporting pedigree in this household. You've also got a background in elite sport. So what's been your journey?
Yeah, so I was left school and went into rowing coaching. Wasn't a particularly good rower and ended up coaching and having some great opportunities as a result. And, not what I had planned to do in any way from a career point of view, but very glad I did it because that's how Tess and I ultimately met. Had a bit of an intersection of her coming back from the States and starting that kind of Olympic prep journey and me being in the home club that she was based in. So, sometimes you look back and you go, oh, was that really my plan? But what wasn't your plan worked out to be a pretty important part of your life. So I had that for sort of 9 or 10 years before really having a moment of realization. Kind of about the same time when Tess made her decision to retire, I sort of looked into the future and we both kind of went, this is not a sustainable lifestyle. Like elite sport is brutal. I wasn't coaching anywhere near the level that Tess was rowing at, but just at a sort of, that emerging national level. And it's brutal. You spend months away from your family. It's early mornings at late nights, and we had a pretty open conversation early on around what we wanted our future to be together, personally, professionally, and it kind of wasn't that. So Tess is a great person at challenging everything that we do in our lifestyles for the better. And we both went skydiving one Christmas and I landed and said, okay, I need to get out of coaching. And and just to Tessa's point around that sort of tap the network or call anyone as being a really key path to growth. I think in many times I think I sat down and rang any person that I knew that wasn't involved in rowing, parents of kids that I had coached, just anyone that would listen to me and give me some ideas. And thankfully, an old maths tutor of mine, Tess Gerrand, who was the managing director at business that I'm now part of and is now part of NIQ, answered my call and said, "Hey, yeah, I'll put you in touch with someone. I'll set up a first conversation." And man, am I thankful that he did, because that's turned out to be a wonderful career at what was Aztec, then IRI, and now Circana. And from there, I think a really good lesson in being humble, right? You go somewhere, you've got experience from a bunch of other opportunities, but absolutely nothing from where you are. On my first day, I walked in and someone mentioned the word NPD, and I was in an account executive role meant to be working with our clients. And I said, "What? Sorry, can you tell me what an NPD is?" And I think 20 people in the room looked at me with this like, "Have we just hired this guy?" But I've used that as a mantra, which we'll talk about later probably as well. You ask the silly question once, right? Because you only get the chance to do that. And the second you don't ask the question is the second someone assumes that you know the answer. So I just kept asking silly questions, and I was very fortunate to kind of move through our client-facing, client service part of the business, working with, many of the wonderful brands from an Australian marketplace point of view. I've had an awesome opportunity to work with so many leaders and observe so many leaders in other businesses. And then kind of 5 years in, so I worked mainly with our manufacturing clients, then got the opportunity to kick off a relationship with Coles when Circana and Coles started partnering in around 2020. So we moved to Melbourne, which was fantastic, set up the team, massive challenge and an exciting role. And then our first son came along, as Tess mentioned, and had the wonderful opportunity to take a full year off as Tess completed her MBA, executive MBA. And, we really partnered through that first year, which was phenomenal. Still one of the better years of life, and really good from a work point of view as well, because I think it gave me a massive reset. I was definitely in a place of grinding myself to the bone from a professional perspective, and that year of just focusing on family and some other things, really reset a bit of perspective. And back to the business, moved into a transformation role, which was very different, not working on any client for the first time in my Circana career, but working more across our technology operations, kind of go to market within the business, which was really, really cool. And I went from having quite a large team to no team and just having to work within a matrix organization. But that role gave me some really nice flexibility. As Tess took a kickoff into Kraft Heinz, I could sort of be a little bit more flexible in what we did. And then as with every business, we changed and we went through a round of different structural movements, and a role came up, an opening to sort of blend what I was doing in transformation, but also take on the leadership of our operations group, which is ultimately everything from data in to data out of our business. It's the engine that drives a data consulting research technology firm. And I've been doing that almost 2 years now, kind of a year and a half, and had a bout of parental leave in there as well when Tess went back to work and I took some time off. So the last 5 years feels really, really busy.
Yeah, it has been. Awesome. Yeah, I liked your story around asking what NPD is, because normally I say to people, if you've got a question that you think is stupid, ask it, because someone else in the room will have the same question, and you've got the one story where no one else had the same question. But I do like that you backed yourself to ask the question though, because you've got to do that. Grace, as we've touched on, you've both got pretty deep roots in elite sport as your background. Maybe Tess, kick us off on this one. How has that experience influenced or shaped your approach to business and leadership?
I think everyone associates like elite sport with hard work, but I think one of the key things in terms of setting up a career is like having to roll your sleeves up and do the doing in the beginning. And so like the mundane and repetitive work that comes with being an entry level, account exec or a rep in the field sets you up so well for like roles later down the track. So for me, being able to like be consistent, show up, do the repetitive, mundane work doesn't sound sexy in any way, but if you have the attitude to be able to handle that, it does you well in the long run. So I think actually when I interviewed for the account exec role off the grad program at Coke, the hiring manager told me that I only got the job because I said I was willing to do the stuff that all the national business managers didn't want to do. The claims and the demand planning and the field team comms and all the repetitive stuff that had to be done each and every week. So yeah, learning to do the hard yards in the beginning sets you up really well and gives you that, match fitness, that race fitness that you need later on in your career.
Well, if you can get a bit 4:30 in the morning or some ungodly hour and grind away rowing for hours on end, then
in the cold and rain.
Yeah, exactly. Then I'm sure sitting at a desk doing new line forms is comparatively a bit of a breeze. But no, great. I really, really like that. And Adam, for you, what would be your perspective on that?
Yeah, like totally agree with what Tess said. Certainly in those early years, that commitment to doing the work and knowing that you have to learn the learnings and you have to go through some of the processes. I think in more recent time, it's been quite interesting. And obviously, as people go through their careers, you will always end up, if you move into management or even in a senior role, working with people that are more experienced than you, that know more of you about the craft or the technical skill set of the role, whatever that is. But you might need to lead them, to manage them, to give direction. And I think I had a massive moment when I was a coach where I was observing an Olympic gold medal winning crew and winning athlete, just quietly sitting in a coaching boat with the head coach next to me. We get off the water and that individual athlete said to me, so what did you see? What could I be working on? And, here was me as a 23-year-old sort of scholarship coach just being like, I've just come here to watch brilliance. And this person who's won a gold medal and been at that national level is asking me for feedback. And, what that taught me that I think I try and take into business as well is like genuinely most people, no matter at what level of experience or tenure within the business, appreciate feedback and are open to it in the right way. And often what you find, right, is some of the most experienced people are craving feedback. And even if it's that more collaborative style and don't get it because everybody thinks that you've been here for 20 years, you know how to do it. So that's been a really interesting learning, probably more relevant in my recent years as I've moved into a bit more large team management. That just keeps me connected. So,
yeah, great. And sticking with you, so Adam, you've spoken about the learning curve that you had coming into the world of FMCG. What was the hardest part for you of shifting from old world to new?
Yeah, I think I have a funny one and maybe a bit more of a serious one. But on the serious side, maybe not the hardest part, but definitely a shift in mentality that coming from coaching and elite sport, there's a really finiteness to the value that you are working with, right? For the most part, it's people's dreams, it's people's lives. People sacrifice their life to pursue high performance goals. And that often means you may train for 12 years of your life and not achieve the goal that you were attaining or striving towards, right? So every decision you make as a coach can genuinely be impacting the outcome of someone's life and their commitment, which I like sometimes to put into perspective with business where, we are dealing with people's lives, absolutely. But for the most part, we're dealing with business's money or profit, or something like that. Those things can be regained. There are second takes, there are learnings which you can do over. So probably perspective, I think coming from a world that is quite ruthless with perspective, which is elite sport, to maybe a world where you have a little more flex, but also learning that you have to be more accommodating and flexible with how you work with individuals because everyone's at a slightly different state and not everybody has a goal of complete achievement, in certain ways. Whereas coming from sport, you kind of do. On the funnier side, I think my first week it was Aztec at the time, but Circana, I can remember, I went from the previous week riding up and down a tow path, coaching athletes, very outdoor, flexible life. I'm having to sit at a desk, from 9 till 5. And at the time, because I had no knowledge of the corporate world, not being sure whether I had to ask permission to go to the bathroom or I could just take myself off. I guess having come from, being educated at a private boys' school, being fairly regimented with desk time, I thought the workplace was the same. So thankfully, I realised after the first week that I could go to the bathroom without asking for permission.
Why does this guy keep asking if he can go to the toilet? Just go, man.
I think that's what my manager said. You don't have to ask.
Didn't know you were actually asked.
So good. And Tess, for you, apart from no longer being able to eat 5,000 calories a day as part of your job, what was the hardest part for you of shifting from sport to business?
I think I was actually reminiscing on this with a friend the other day who's just about to have her first child, and she made it to 4 Olympics in the end. And she said she remembers this conversation with me 3 or 4 years into, corporate career. And I was just pondering what the end game is. And I think that was the hardest part. So elite sport's pretty clear, particularly in an Olympic sport. You want to make it to the Olympics, you want to win a gold medal. But what does that actually mean in a corporate sense? The goalposts move every year. It's a different budget. What does good look like for you as an individual, as a leader? I find that it's still something that I continue to struggle with. It's not as cut and dry.
Oh, it makes complete sense. And a lot of conversation I have with people around either end of financial year or end of calendar year is it's all about closing out this year, but you're already you're well into planning for next year, if not the year after. So you never get that demarcation point to go, yes, we did it, goal achieved, celebrate. Now what's the next thing? It's always about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing all at the same time. So I can imagine that'd be a big shift. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the goalpost for like what a gold medal for a career looks like, or what gold medals for us as a family look like, I think is continually changes year to year.
Yeah. Staying with you, Tess, any similarities that you found between elite sport and elite FMCG that have surprised you?
Yeah, well, I think you just touched on it, right? Like for me, it's the cycles. There are cycles to everything. There's a 4-year Olympiad and there's 3-year brand planning cycles. And there's a need within that as an individual and as a team to have peak performance, periods where you're training and preparing, periods where you actually need to recover and take a breath and take a step away and have a think about what you need to do in that next stage of peak performance. So it's cycles for me, I think, and understanding how you plan for those cycles is really important. And then the forming of teams is really important. So being able to quickly form teams and move them towards the same goal is vital, right? So you can have a really great, had this happen many times in a rowing boat, you can have 8 great individuals, but if they can't get on the same page and row with the same stroke, you're not going to go as fast as a team of 8 average rowers who are all on the same page and they believe their coach's mantra and they'll do whatever they're told. So that, I think, is one of the really interesting things. How do you form teams really quickly? How do you get everyone on the same page and moving in the same direction?
Yeah, great. I mean, you talked about the cycles. I think there's probably more we could do as an industry around the recovery part of the cycle in business and exactly what that looks like. We're very good at the other bits, I think.
Yeah.
And Adam, do you have a perspective on that?
Like, I think actually just picking up what you mentioned, that, sort of echoing Tess, the cycles of business, highly similar. But I was, reflecting actually with my boss the other night that, in sport, you train 90% of the time to perform, 2 or 3% of the time to recover, a couple of other percent, probably a little more recovery in there. Performance is such a finite moment, particularly in a distance sport like rowing or running or, cycling. But the same premise goes for team sports as well. Whereas in business, we are performing 99% of the time with very little training dedicated time. I think everyone is probably trying to juggle professional development just as part of day to day. And then active recovery is a concept almost unknown, but highly required. And so putting some purpose to that and being purposeful with active recovery, I think it should be more of a similarity, but perhaps not enough of a similarity as it is right now.
Yeah, agree. Tess, you've talked us through your sort of career journey in totality, but if you had to pick out 1 or 2 key turning points in your career, like real inflection points for you, what would they be?
So I think the going out and doing that role within the Mojo, with the Mojo brand and the organic and raw team was pretty pivotal. It was a brand that I loved, and it was during COVID. So I think a lot of people worked like dogs during that COVID period. So threw a lot into that experience, and it was great for me early on in my career to do that in a much smaller business, and also, I guess, have an appreciation for the level of support that larger businesses have, like a fully fledged RGM team and category teams, etc. So I think that was really interesting for me, but also, I got my hands dirty, so I learned so much in such a short period of time. That was really powerful. But we didn't shoot the lights out as a brand too. So I think there's a lot of learnings from probably failure and, not quite getting it right through that process and not being able to innovate and pivot quickly enough. So I think there was a lot of learnings in that for me. And then the more recent example I would give you would be coming off maternity leave and being unemployed is a really interesting, it wasn't really maternity leave, time off work, and with my newborn and finishing an MBA and being unemployed and looking for that next role. There was a lot of nerves, I think, in those few months. Probably took me 6 months, let's say 3 to 4 months of active looking, 6 months of thinking about it to try and figure out what I wanted to do. And there were opportunities that came up through that time, which were at that national business manager level. And that would have been a really easy choice. Would have been much quicker. But taking the time and having that time and confidence from Adam to back myself into finding the role that I really wanted was pretty special. And we'll always look back on that and really be grateful for myself for backing myself into that. But also to, the sales director, Anderson and Aero, who actually hired me at that time, hiring someone into a promoted role off the back of parental leave into full-time work after her first kid, that's pretty ballsy. And so I credit him with the confidence, and he loves having women in his team because he knows, particularly young mums, because he knows we work really hard. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that, for him taking that chance on me.
Great. No, that's an awesome thing to get out there, because we see an awful lot of very risk-averse hiring, which is totally understandable to an extent, but I think it's also a massive missed opportunity in some cases. So, and Adam, for you as well, what would be one or two of your biggest challenges or real breakthrough moments that you faced into in your career?
Yeah, I think the opportunity that I had when we moved down to Melbourne, when our business had kicked off our partnership with Coles, and I was fortunate enough to sort of come into the role. And again, I think Tessa's pointed, it's partly the courage of people within the business to put you into a role. And our HR director, Nicole Green, MD Paul Heinz, and retail director Justin Finney kind of were like, yep, let's take a punt here on someone that never worked with a large retailer, had done a few good things, but given a pretty big opportunity to manage a pretty big part of our P&L. That role was effectively, you're heading up Coles. We've got one person in the team for you. And over the next 18 months, you'll be growing that team to 30 across insights, operation, customer facing. And so I had my day job of managing and working with Coles, which was incredibly exciting just as COVID hit, and trying to then build and scale a team to deliver yesterday on the requirements of a, incredibly complex, sophisticated, demanding retailer and client, which was fantastic to work for. But, the day someone starts is the day that they're expected to deliver. So, I think for me, the really cool moment there is how many people in their career get the opportunity to build their team literally from the bottom up with almost no restrictions on who, what, when, where, and how. And so I just had an awesome opportunity to bring some great people within our business into the team, but also go out to market and find some really talented individuals, many of whom are still within our business in new and exciting roles. And I take so much pride from, having been able to have that moment in my career and their career, but also see them go off and succeed within in the rest of our business as well. So, and then off the back of that, actually, taking the year of parental leave, seeing someone in my team take over my role, which was great, not knowing what I'd come back to, but being able to completely switch off from any thoughts professionally and be 100% focused on family and home life and, working out how to be a parent and supporting Tess and our first son, Axel. Completely opposite end of the challenge spectrum, way more rewarding and amazing.
That's a really nice segue to talk about probably the biggest challenge, because as things stand, no one is on leave. You're both doing your full-time jobs. You're raising two little ones. How do you make it work? Tess, do you want to lead off on that?
Yeah, we could probably talk about this for hours and hours on end. And that's kind of what we do. We communicate a lot. So it takes a lot of conversations. It actually took a lot of conversations even before we had kids around how we wanted to show up as parents, but also how we wanted to continue our career. And that requires compromise, and it requires two really involved parents to make that work. So we plan a lot. We have multiple whiteboards. We have weekly whiteboards. We have annual whiteboards. We have vision and values for the family. So we have a process that we work through to update those annually. And those really help with our decision making, right? So once you have that kind of core values that you want to go back to and what you want to prioritize, that helps us in the daily decision making. It feels like you're in the weeds and it's exhausting. You get that decision fatigue because you're constantly needing to make choices and compromises. One of the kids is sick and someone's got to prioritize one meeting over another because we've got a little one at home. So yeah, we talk a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we also have I think we know that there are different seasons. So to each of our careers, and we try and up to time them at the same time with a brand new role for each of us. So we try and spread that out the best we can, even though Adam's latest role started the same week that we had our second child. So
it's not always going to be
we try
perfect.
our best. We plan as best we can.
Totally. I was going to say the planning is excellent, but of course there's going to be those moments where your perfect plan collides with a little bit of reality you maybe weren't expecting. Adam, are there any specific sort of strategies that you guys employment either to juggle things, but also to kind of stay connected as a couple as well amongst all this?
Yeah, and I think I'll start off with just a bit of like as Tess said, we do a lot of planning, we talk, but I think the element of flexibility, and I know a lot of couples out there trying to do the juggle. Moments come up that aren't planned, right, and they create chaos, and often it creates tension. And I think we do. I like to think we do a really good job of staying flexible and still having a feedback loop. If one of us pretty much regularly on a Friday, one of us will have an 8 a.m. call. Tess manages teams in New Zealand. I'm often on the call with some US colleagues, and just sometimes we forget, right, and we conflict, and so we'll make sure we can sort it out, and then afterwards we'll go, hey, how do we do that a bit better? Like a great quote, I think it's a Mike Tyson line, everybody's got a plan until you jump in the ring and someone hits you in the face. And sometimes there's a toddler actually hitting you in the face, right? And you got to just
you're presenting
it.
Local president.
Yeah. And sometimes, Tess or I might have one of the kids, if we've had to pick someone up from daycare or whatnot, they'll be on screen and you just kind of roll with it. And I think as well, though, and I will answer your actual question in a second, but having the kids see that flexibility and also see us in our natural state trying to juggle a bit of work and not get too stressed out about if it's perfect, I think is a really healthy thing for the family, because it kind of normalizes that it's a juggle and we're not unavailable in any space. We are doing the juggle, and certainly from other colleagues, that's been a valuable comment that I've had made to me around. It's just nice to see people being a bit raw around it. The strategies, as Tess said, I think like the strategies is, there's one, which is having those kind of launch platforms for each other. So when I took on the Coles role, Tess was in a stable space, and that allowed me to be a bit more risky and a bit, work a bit harder, do some things that, weren't sustainable. And then likewise, when we came back from parental leave, I was in a very stable, very flexible role, and that allowed Tess to be a little more risky, get into the office a bit more, in a new role and meet some people. I can do a little more on the home front. So we always try and stay synced up until we don't and something else comes in. But I think the planning is so important, because at the end of the day, we take away so many low-level decisions and decision fatigue that we genuinely open up time for each other and ourselves to do a date day. Like every now and again on a Friday afternoon, we'll take an hour, we'll go get a pedicure together. We often end up talking about work, which we did the last time we did that. Or, we'll go grab a spa together or something like that. But we couldn't do that if we didn't have a really good plan and start work early that day to get everything done, so we could take an hour at the end of the day before we pick the kids up. So I think those little micro moments are super valuable to how we connect outside of the hustle and bustle of it all.
Yeah, and you've got to be so intentional with it, because it will not happen on its own. Tess,
I think the one thing I want to preface is that we have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, right? So we've been so lucky in the post-COVID era that we are able to work flexibly, and that, I'm sure there'll be people listening to this podcast who have children that are, older or, well and truly running around before COVID, and we've very spoiled, I think, in the changes that have happened in the corporate world to enable a bit more flexibility, particularly from a work from home point of view. We can do these, amazing, an ANZ role, and I work from home a couple of days a week. So we do have a lot more flexibility, I think, than when we started our careers, and what we observed was, much more difficult. Yeah, so I do want to preface that, because I know it's a very privileged position to be in, and very different than the industry was even 10 years ago.
No, completely. I think that acknowledgement is really, really important. I think sometimes when we're having a real juggle week and it feels really stressful, I go, do you know what? At least I've got the sort of job where it's a possibility that I can move things around. I can manage my calendar. I can work from home. I'm not working 3 jobs which require me to be on site or out, whatever it is. So we are in a position where we're able to do these things. So I think that acknowledgement's really important, but at the same time, it doesn't take away the strain or the challenges of being in that particular position. So you've got to do what you can within the privileges that you've got to make it work. Tess, you actually sent through a bit of a list earlier this week of some resources that you guys have found really useful. And what I'd love to do, I'll pop them all into the show notes so that if anyone's interested in exploring them, they can have a look at them. Were there one or two of those in particular that you wanted to call out as being useful for you guys?
Yeah, I think I love to read. And I think one of the first books that kind of came across our radar was Fair Play by Eve Rodsky. And it talks around, I think it was one of the first books really talking actively around the mental load that it takes to run a family in a household. So that was really pivotal in some of our early conversations before we wanted to have kids. There was a period of time where we didn't want to have kids because some of the couples or the examples that we observed were doing things in a way that we just couldn't see that as being sustainable for us. So that book really helped because it talks about splitting up the mental load and finding a way to have specific ownership over tasks and divvying that up. Now, I think I did negotiate very well early on through some of those conversations. I traded ironing all of Adam's work shirts for cooking at the time, right?
And doing all the rest of the laundry.
And the it was just laundry. It was laundry for ironing.
Yes.
But who irons shirts these days? Is pretty like he works from home 5 days a week unless he's traveling for work.
We haven't reset those trading terms. So unfortunately, I'm still on the laundry tip, but there's some other things that have gone on. So
yeah.
I think having a child physically has a trade-off that is challenging to rebalance.
We use that in negotiation at all times.
Yeah.
So that was a really good one.
Yeah.
And then Annabelle Crabb has a book called The Wife Drought. And the subtitle of that is Why Women Need Wives and Why Men Need Lives. And I love this book. So great. She essentially talks to the statistics around men in really senior roles and whether or not their wives are working. And in a lot of instances, most instances, they have a partner or a wife at home supporting them to complete that role. And we all know that there are many, many roles across our industries that require, if you have a household to run and kids, they require one person to be at home to support that. And she also talks to the fact that for true equality, we really need to be able to give men the permission to take a step back out of the workplace through parental leave, for example, to go and spend the time at home with kids and helping manage the household to support, their partners' careers. And that's kind of been the thing that's been held back with feminism. Women can go into the workplace and women can have it all, but they kind of have to do it all too. And the thing that's missing is men being able to take a step back from the workplace and being the provider and the breadwinner and actually really getting stuck into what's required at home to get that required balance. So we've had lots of great conversations about those two books particularly.
Yeah, awesome. Leading on from that, Tess, do you feel like FMCG companies are doing enough to support working parents? And are there any areas where you feel like we could be doing more?
Look, I think relative to a lot of other industries, I think we are. I think the flexibility that we have in the way that we work is really powerful. And I have seen, there's been a significant change even in the last 5 years in terms of the step away from it just being maternity leave to being paternity leave and primary caregivers versus just caregivers leave. So I think all those changes are really healthy. I think we're doing okay. I think it ends up coming down to the individuals in the organisation too, though, right? So who you interact with, your manager, your peers, like what example that sets. And I'm even really particular when I hear men in the team that they're going to have a baby. I'm really particular about asking when they're taking paternity leave and really encouraging them to do that because I want them to feel like they're encouraged to do so, just as it would be expected that a woman's going to take maternity leave when they have a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there's people I've spoken with from some of the multinational kind of tier one FMCGs, dads who are telling me they're going off on 6 months leave and they're excited about it. And I think it's great. It's such a good shift. It's definitely a step in the right direction. And Adam, anything that you'd add on this topic?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think relative to other industries, we're doing a pretty good job. I'm really fortunate. Circana's had a great parental leave policy in the period that I've been there, and actually, it's probably one of the things that early on ended up. You get those moments of your career where you start looking at other opportunities, and it was around about that time that we were thinking about starting a family. And I sort of said, well, I've got really good network here. The business is very supportive, and we get 4 months of paid parental leave, which is really fantastic. But I think the Tessa's point around the people and the individuals, and particularly the role that leaders can play in enabling and creating a space that's supported. I remember the first conversation that I had with my boss at the time, Justin Finney, who leads our retail practice. And I was in COVID. I called him on a sunny walk. I remember it crystal clear. And I was a bit nervous about basically telling him I was going to take a year off, not I wanted to. And, his response.
You did want to, though.
Absolutely. I did, but I wanted to try and frame it as not that I was asking permission. I was really I wanted to be really purposeful in that I was doing it just, to make it happen. And I absolutely did want to. And his response was like the most elevating response, right? Because he was just, that's amazing. He's got 3 kids. I think he said, I wish the system was like this when I became a dad. What do you need from me? I think was the first thing. Or what do you need to help set this up for success? that kind of response, right, just changes the way that this needs to be enabled, particularly for more men to take parental leave. But I think more broadly within the industry for men and women to take the leave that's required and balance with their families is people to just work it out, not to see it as an inconvenience. Because I know in my current team, I have a number of people that are in a very similar phase of life. Some of the people that I go to first to get things done because they juggle, they flex, they are really great with their team. So it builds a really dynamic culture, I think, of achieving your goals, but also having a really healthy balance between, home and work life. So can we still do more? Absolutely. And I think, the caution that I throw to businesses as we bring people back into the office, which obviously has a really important role to play in human physical connection, is, don't underestimate the change in load that places on parents around pickups and prepping dinner and all the funny little things that happen between 8:30 and 9 and, 3:30 and 5 for a working parent. So I think having a healthy balance of hybrid work is a really important enabler to families being successful and people being successful in their careers.
Agree completely. And to give everyone listening some sort of practical tips, Tess, I'm sure there's lots of things, but what's one thing, whether it's a tool, it's a mantra, system, whatever it is, one thing that's helped you navigate career growth and family life?
I'll give a piece of advice first, which was some of my favourite advice that I've received about being a working mum. It was from Alison Watkins, who was the MD at Coca-Cola Amatil when I was there as a grad. And I think she was speaking at a Women's Day morning tea or something. And she controversially said her best advice for people was to marry well. So marry someone who's willing to support like your career and your goals, because that enables so much down the track. Her husband ended up taking a step back from his career so that she could chase some of the ultimate roles within the industry in Australia. So that paid off well for her. And they had, 3 beautiful kids and seemed to manage the juggle okay. On a really practical front, though, this actually came from advice from her at another point in time too, was around outsourcing as much as you can from the very get-go. So I think we got a cleaner before we could even hire, like really afford one. And these days we spend a lot of money on childcare, and we also have like an au pair that supports us with the juggle at the moment with a really young, 18-month-old at home. And we try and simplify our lives, do all our, 95% of our grocery shopping online. We try to strip out those repetitive tasks that I said are really good for you to do in the early days. But that create space and time for us to spend time with our kids on the weekend and really enjoy it. Or, we don't have to clean on the weekends to spend time with us as a family. So, outsourcing as much as you absolutely can. And again, that's a privilege, right? To be in a financial situation to try and spend more on groceries that are delivered to your house. But it really opens our time up to focus where we want to spend our time.
Agree completely. I like the advice as well. I think marrying well is one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make. I'm punching so far above my weight with my wife, and but we met a financial advisor planner a couple of years back, and he said the same thing. Even though it feels like an expensive investment in getting a cleaner, outsourcing stuff, he was like, think about it in terms of the time and the space that it creates and what that then enables you to do and how that benefits you long term. So again, if you're able to do it, you're in a very privileged position, but it's absolutely something I would agree with.
Who really wants to spend time talking about who's going to clean the toilet instead of like, what's our goal and vision for our life as a family? Like, spend time talking about that rather than, can you clean the toilet this weekend? Like, no-brainer.
Well, you guys wouldn't talk about it because it's already allocated, right? It's Adam every time.
I have not cleaned a toilet in many, many years because I would be happy to pay for that out of my personal, spending splurge allocation, because that is not where I want to spend my time. But we are privileged to do that, but we've also made a conscious decision to, direct our resources to that as well.
Yes, I love it. And Adam, same question to you.
Yeah. I do love, I think there is a philosophical one which Tess said around marry well. And I think, your partner, but also the groups of people that you spend around you, whether they're colleagues or friends, will either be your ceiling or your floor. And I think, you do need to be conscious around the energy that you take from the people around you and obviously the people that are most close to you to leverage yourself. So that's, not everybody can re-choose on that one, right? I am a marriage celebrant on the side. I love marrying people. So, so far all my marriages, no repeat business, which is what I always aim to. So, we're on some good principles, but on the practical sense, I do think, creating the space to communicate about what you're about to enter and talk about the nitty gritty. The first thing I say when someone in my team says, hey, we're about to have a kid, or, we're thinking about it, I say, who's going to change the nappies? You're going 50-50, or is one person going to do it? It actually doesn't matter what the answer is. What's important is you both acknowledge that you're comfortable with that answer, right? And I've got some friends who have decided on a more traditional setup in their relationships where their wife will stay at home, for a couple of years and they'll be off doing a career, but they've aligned on why they want to do that and why it's meaningful to each other, and have aligned that at some point that might change. I think the worst thing you can do in your personal life from what bleeds into your professional life is for people just to fall into their sort of norms and roles by default and then become unhappy that that's what they're doing. And, I think equally a lot of, and this is very heteronormative, but a lot of women feel stuck in the role that they're in, but equally some men feel stuck in a provider role, and that doesn't have to be like that, but you have to talk about it and look at the options. And so, I think we, from a career balancing point of view, have always tried to view what we're doing professionally as the sum of what we're both doing in the long run. So it's not about, I'll go and grab a 20K pay rise or, whatever that is. That's just an abstract example. It's how is this contributing to our long-term combined goal of where we want to be financially, personally, excitement-wise, in life, to still be doing the things that we kind of love doing. So have the conversation and be purposeful about the roles that you play if you're in a relationship, and then likewise if you're not, how you want that to lead into your professional life as well.
Yeah, great. I think the thing I would take from everything you both said is that regardless of what system or strategies you choose to employ, the key thing is to make all of these things kind of conscious and spoken about. Because then you get that alignment, and if you don't, it's unspoken, and that's what breeds unhappiness or resentment, and you'll have to talk about it at some point, so you may as well do it in a purposeful way.
Totally. I mean, as a business, if you think about it, how many businesses invest in articulating their vision, their mission, and their core pillars of strategy, and plaster that on every wall in the building, on your background? One of the books that Tess shared, The Family Firm, one of the first things they get you to do is to articulate your family vision or purpose, or your life vision and purpose. And it might be a bit dorky, but we print that off, and it's on our mantelpiece as we come down the stairs in the morning to reflect on what's important to us, what do we want to do. And it's everything from our big long-term happiness goal to we want to make sure we go for a walk with the dogs at least 4 days a week as a family, or with a family member. All tactical stuff that brings us joy. So, yeah.
Nice. And to finish us off, if you could give your younger selves one piece of career or life advice, what would it be, Tess?
I mentioned being a little bit uppity earlier in the podcast, and I think, if a couple of my colleagues from those account exec roles listened to that, they would have a good laugh, because I was really impatient. So I think you can get really caught up in some of those externally motivated goals. Is it a gold medal? Is it the next career? Is it the pay rise? Is it the next banding in role? And that can be really appealing. But I think what I would say to a younger self would be, I'll tell you what's really hard, what's really challenging is having balance. That's really hard. That should be the ultimate goal. Again, I know a lot of Olympians, I know a lot of Olympic medalists who have been to the pinnacle of our sport, and you wake up the next day and you're still the same person. And I think sometimes people chase through their careers, that next role, next pay rise. Oh, if I'm going to earn X more money, I'll be happy and content. And I know, having been to the Olympics and kind of reached that ceiling, I never won a medal, but at least going to the Olympics, reaching that ceiling and kind of knowing it doesn't solve all your problems, or, you're not.
Yeah,
it's not all it's cracked up to be. And you're not immediately content for the rest of your life at that point, at 24 years old or something. So I think the real hard thing is balance, and that's what I would challenge my younger self to chase after, is balance.
Nice. Great. And Adam, what would you tell younger Adam if you could go back and give him a shake?
I think on the career front, I saw an awesome quote the other day that it's pretty simple, and I think it's just a nice relevant one. That's like, at every job you should either earn or learn. Either is fine, both is best, but if it's neither, just quit. And that's probably a pretty good one throughout your career, right? It's fine sometimes to do a job you don't really love, and if it's a little bit more money, then great, you chuck it away. It's probably not long term. And then on the flip side, it's totally cool to do a job that you love and that you're learning in, but maybe isn't hitting your financial goals. Pretty binary, but you do it for a period of time, and then ideally you get something you're doing both. I don't know if many people, completely do that. There's this Japanese concept called ikigai, and if you can look it up, it's a pretty nice intersection of what you're passionate about, what the world needs, what you're good at, and a couple of other concepts. And everyone's searching for that. And I think a long time I searched for that middle thing, the thing that's going to tick every box and that you can earn for, right? That's the other bucket. I want to get paid for something meaningful that I love, that people value. That doesn't exist, or for very few people does it exist. So just find something that satisfies your need. And I think going back to our earlier point, industry and the role that I'm in, I love, like, do everything. Is it changing the face of humanity? No, but it's doing some good, and it allows us to live a really balanced lifestyle, as Tess said, and we can go and do some other things. So you don't have to have a quadruple win all the time, is I think the advice that I'd give my younger self.
Great. Adam and Tess, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been awesome. Really, really good conversation. Both got fascinating stories, and it's great to dive into the topic of how you do the juggle. I think it's something that we need to talk more about. And I'm sure there'll be lots of people listening who are in the same position, or maybe hoping to be in this position one day, who'll take a lot from it. So yeah, thank you both very much for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great to be here.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Your Future in Sales and Marketing. We'll be back very soon with more inspiring career journeys. If you want to discuss yours in the meantime, reach out to me or any of the team here at AXR. Our purpose is to help you make great career decisions. See you next time. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast from AXR Recruitment and Search. We're passionate about helping you get the most out of your sales and marketing career. Keep listening as we bring you more career insights and advice from Australia's inspiring sales and marketing leaders. See you next time on Your Future in Sales and Marketing.